Hey, this is David Owen.
And this is Marian Cowagowan.
And this is You Show Me Yours, a podcast where a married couple talks about the movies and television that they loved before the first date. And this time, I was made to watch Contagion.
Yes, Contagion. It's the movie that made me way too optimistic for how COVID was going to go when it happened. Also, the movie that taught me that if you're going to have an affair, you should do it in your hometown so you don't accidentally carry a virus to an entire metro area. Keep it home, people. Don't spread disease, really.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking, wait a minute, I thought they met way before this movie came out. Yes, we did. We're fudging it a little bit with the dates. This month is the 5-year anniversary of when COVID took over the world. Remember staying at your house for a really long time and going outside and clapping at 8:00 at night or whatever the heck it is we did then? That was 5 years ago this month. So to mark that, we are watching movies about pandemics, epidemics, viruses that take over the world, et cetera, et cetera. And this one is Contagion. Came out in 2011. Director is Steven Soderbergh. And it follows a couple of different threads of people experiencing / investigating a pandemic of a respiratory virus that evolved from a pig and a bat, which I think is actually what COVID was. No, it was a pig.
I don't remember.
Or a bat. I don't remember. Eerily similar to COVID. And I think a lot of people marked their first week or so of lockdown by watching this and a lot of other pandemic movies. I remember watching this and Outbreak and some Canadian series about a virus that you could tell when you got it because you started sneezing, which was weird. And these two people were in love the whole time, but they couldn't touch. And finally they succumbed to their passions and they made out with a shower curtain between them. And then the lady died. It was a little odd. So there was a lot of viral programming out there, but this I think was the one that a lot of people watched, and it taught me terms like are not and fomites, and so it was instructive. Yay!
Cool.
So you had not seen this before, right?
Nope.
I don't know how.
I don't know.
You just escaped it.
I'm not a bandwagoner. That's how.
I wanted to see Gwyneth Paltrow die, really.
Yeah.
And then, she dies like 15 minutes in, rather dramatically.
Yeah.
And you see her later in sort of flashbacks, kind of, and you see her getting an autopsy. They're looking at her brain. But the character dies. So if you don't like Gwyneth Paltrow, you might like this. Because she's kind of the villain, really, if you need one.
Yeah.
So first thing we should mention, there's possibly a sequel to this on the list of things that nobody asked for.
Okay.
Soderbergh has said he is thinking about, quote, a philosophical sequel to this. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. I don't think I want that. But he's quoted as saying this in like December of 2020. So I think that might have been just, hey, I hear a lot of people are watching my movie. So, and maybe that's not going to happen. I don't think that needs to happen.
We're good.
No. But let's all manifest that does not happen, because I really don't think I want that. So this follows 4, maybe 5 groups of people. It's one of these, an ensemble cast, and everybody is connected somehow, and you gradually figure it out. There's the Amhoff family. Gwyneth Paltrow is one of them. Just a regular family in Minnesota, and Beth turns out to be they call her the index patient, like the first person who died of this disease, and she spreads it. A bunch of scientists and doctors at the CDC, one of whom ends up going to Minneapolis and meeting the Amhoffs. A doctor from the WHO who's she's doing like contact tracing, kind of trying to figure out who started it, who spread it to whom, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And my least favorite character in the whole thing, Jude Law as a blogger who is all about the truth serum. Remember blogs that they make?
Yeah.
Like TikTok makes blogs look like PhD dissertations. I kind of miss those days, except not really if this is what they were all like. He's talking about corporate greed and big pharma, and they've got the cure and they're charging you for it, and all of which is true. But he is peddling a homeopathic medication of his own and telling people that it cures this disease, and it actually doesn't. And he's just sort of a douchebag, and I hate him. Fun fact: did you notice that he has crooked teeth, Dave?
Yeah, I did.
That was on purpose to make him look less trustworthy, which I feel like is kind of gross. Like some people just have janky teeth.
Yeah,
it's fine. But he's gross.
Mm-hmm.
But those are our kind of storylines. And it's starts with Beth gets home and she's sick and she has a seizure and she dies, and then her son dies, and then gradually people who have been in touch with her, both at home and then on her flight before then, get sick, and pretty much it spreads everywhere. And you get some glimpses of how it works at the CDC. Like we have a cluster of this disease here and this disease here, and let's check it out and see, and we need to examine the virus and that kind of thing. And then they need to figure out where the virus came from and figure out its structure, and then they need to grow it, and then they can figure out a vaccine, and it's all these steps, right?
Yeah.
And they're working with the WHO to track it worldwide, and you see these big conference calls, it's like Zoom with 15 screens from locations everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of cooperation has to happen.
Yeah.
Hint, hint, hint. This is why the WHO is a good thing, and also the CDC and federal
Mm-hmm.
workers. We love them.
Yep.
Not saying that for any reason, just throwing that out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so I've talked a lot. What are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, it was fun. No, yeah, I mean it is there's some interesting similarities, there's some interesting differences in how 2020 played out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they get some stuff right, they get some stuff wrong, if you're looking at it as a predictor. But yeah, I think it's fun overall. I think everybody gets there. When I say fun overall, I mean like judging it as a film, not as like it's emotional
Mm-hmm.
content. It's fun to see some behind the scenes of the CDC stuff and the WHO, how some of that gets done, like how much work goes into some of that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and how the bureaucracy tries to speed it up or slow it down. Yeah, and it was the Jude Law character is very interesting. And yeah, seeing they play him like it's clear that he's also has his own motives, but they play him out as in an interesting way. You kind of know from the beginning, and like they're dropping hints, like the fact that after he supposedly had it
Mm-hmm.
and been cured by his magic drops or whatever, he's still out on the street wearing like an oxygen hood.
Yeah.
Which is not something someone who has antibodies, and this is one of those diseases where like once you've had it once, you're done.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, like, if you haven't seen this, it's like a bubble suit. Like, this is way beyond what anybody wore during COVID.
Yeah,
like,
and just the fact that he was wearing that around the streets of his like hometown.
Yes.
I was like, okay, no, he definitely didn't have it.
Well, it also seemed kind of performative, too.
100%.
Like, this guy says this disease is really serious, and which this disease is, it strikes me as, it's very convenient that TV and movie pandemics, first of all, you go from exposure to sick in like an hour.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And there's always a very obvious sign when it starts that, like you're sneezing, or you've got a rash in a particular place. Or I still remember one episode of some science show on PBS that I watched, 40 plus years ago. They called it the red eyelid virus. And I think it was supposed to be based on hepatitis or something. I don't know. Anyway, it's very clear who has it and who doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's extremely fatal. Like I think at some point they said here, this is a fatality rate of 20%.
Yeah.
Whereas COVID, I think, was like 2.
Mm-hmm.
Depending greatly on your what strain you got and how healthy you were and what healthcare you could get and all this other stuff. So TV and movie pandemics are conveniently, they happen very fast,
Yeah. Yeah.
and everyone has cause to take them very seriously, which unfortunately, did not happen with COVID. I think the problem that we had was the virus didn't kill everybody, and so a lot of people were like, no big deal.
Yeah.
But in this world, nobody says that. They panic real fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's shots of the nurses are on strike, and so there's nobody to take care of patients at the hospital, and the garbage workers are on strike, so trash is piling up, and I guess the grocery store workers are on strike, and so the stores are empty, so people are breaking in and looting, and and like none of that happened.
Yeah. Like
here.
I said, yeah, some things that got right, some things that got wrong.
Yeah.
The Hollywood, and I think fiction in general, has a fascination with the unwinding of civilization
Mm-hmm.
and how quickly it can happen. And even when we see riots and things, like, they all pretty quickly go back to orderly society.
Mm-hmm.
The LA riots didn't last for years.
Yeah.
They were over in a matter of days or hours even. And things were kind of back to normal in the vast majority of the areas pretty quickly. And
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's there is a sort of, every one of these movies, especially like a zombie movie, they always want to, like, all the humans were the worst part of this. They abandoned their principles and morals like just days into this zombie apocalypse and started
Mm-hmm.
killing, or like, watch The Road or read The Road, that kind of stuff. It's like, at the end of the world, as it's slowly dying off, it's not the virus or the zombies or the aliens that you need to fear. It's the fellow humans that are left behind, that are, looking to prey upon you, and back to their base instincts and all this stuff.
The enemies we made along the way.
Yeah. So it gets some stuff spectacularly wrong, and some of the stuff that it gets right, I think, is the stuff that is the most poignant stuff, like with the Jude Law character, like how he managed to, and we saw a real good example of that, how COVID became politicized, and it became about, I'm going to take this horse medicine instead of
Mm-hmm.
a vaccine. I'm going to not mask, all of these things, which should have just been your, for lack of a better word, patriotic duty to your fellow countrymen, became politicized and became these things that people used as a means to show their political affiliation more than their patriotism and their humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes down to the leadership that we had at the time, and how weak it was,
or
and how weak
thereof.
it continues to be.
Yeah.
Because I think a strong leader gets up there, and that's free of party. In the American political system, a strong leader, George Bush was a strong leader when he needed to be.
Yeah.
George W. Bush was a strong leader when he needed to be. Ronald Reagan was a strong leader when he needed to be. And not everybody hits that mark. And we're currently plagued with a guy who never seems to hit that mark.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That would have been something that might have been a little more interesting. Is if the messaging was a little more talked about, because it's talked about a little bit, which was cool to see. They're like, say this and don't say that, and the Lawrence Fishburne character gets caught in like a kind of a gotcha moment interview.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that stuff that like really breeds distrust in a way that isn't deserving, like, because this one guy told his fiance or whatever to get out of Chicago
before they
right,
and
all of a sudden
city shut down,
right, all of a sudden the anti-vaxxer, for lack of a better term, is using that one failing as a reason to doubt essentially everything he says.
Yeah, and at the end there's a mention that he's gonna be hauled in front of Congress, and I don't know, chastised for something, and I was like, oh, how quaint. Like that's
Yeah, yeah. Remember that? Remember when actions had consequences
Mhm.
for government officials?
Yeah. I think it's interesting at the beginning. So, uh, Erin Mears, played by Kate Winslet, is what's it called? The Epidemiological Investigation Service, something like that.
Something like that.
She's the doctor and she works for the CDC, and she's the one who's sent out to be like, okay, what's this disease?
Yeah,
How many people have it? Let me talk to the patients or their families and figure out what came from where, and et cetera, et cetera. And she's talking with the state health department, and they seem spectacularly clueless. Like they don't
yeah,
know how. Well, I mean, this is a chance for exposition, so she can explain the concept of the R naught and fomites and that kind of thing. So okay, the movie needs them to be dumb, but one of the health department employees is this colossal bitch
yeah. And
who
it's a character actress who often plays this character.
she's suited for it. Like
Yes,
she's got,
yes,
yeah, she's got a bitch face. So do what you're made to do, I guess. And she's the one who's like, oh, we messed up with the flu. What was it? The swine flu in
yeah, yeah,
2009. I remember that was the first year that I got a flu shot because I was pregnant, and I was like, oh, I really don't, now is the time to do it, and now I get it all the time. But yeah, that was sort of an overreaction, and I guess, or at least now we say it's an overreaction because we didn't have a pandemic.
right.
Like you want to look back and say we overreacted. It's better than underreacting.
Yes, it's the yeah. You got to take all 10 days of the antibiotic.
Yes.
Like the precautions that you took were the reason that it didn't become a pandemic. And
Yes.
so yes, though in hindsight those may have seemed harsh,
Yes.
they were actually the things that kept it from getting out of control.
Yes. You want to say, oh man, my car insurance is such a waste because I never had an accident.
Right.
Like that's much better than the alternative. But
Yeah.
but she's thrown things in people's faces like we overreacted to this last time, and people got scared and they didn't need to, and we shouldn't do anything. And somebody says like we don't want to cause a panic on Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah.
Because then people won't shop and blah blah blah. Because God forbid people are stopped from buying anything.
Yeah.
But all the sort of internal behind the scenes considerations before it even gets going were interesting.
Yeah, it was fun to see. Yeah. And to see, and I believe that or some variation of people who do what she does is one of the things that has been cut recently.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
The investigators who go out and kind of track this stuff, because yeah, to a layman, this seems like it has no value, and that's the problem. I mean, we've talked about this, and I don't want to make it too political. I don't want to make it too right now political because someone might be listening to this and in 2028. How are the unconfederated American states doing in 2028? How's Southern America and Upper Canada doing?
Yeah.
Lower Canada, sorry.
And northern Mexico and southern
northern
Canada.
Mexico and southern Canada.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is one of those things where they give you this little peek of like, hey, this doesn't seem useful on the surface, and as someone who once I used to get paid to sit in an office and wait for a phone to ring, but the people on the other end of those lines were 911 centers with their phones down, were hospitals with their connectivity, their internet, their ability to reach their softwares or transfer vital medical records down. And so it made sense to pay me to take on average 6 calls a week. And that's the kind of thing here of like her character Mears like probably isn't doing a lot of work that you can quantify with 5 bullet points each week.
Yeah.
But when you need that person, they are vital to helping everything come together.
Yeah. When crisis hits, you need someone who is supremely qualified and can go wherever. And we didn't get into any of this, but I imagine like she probably can't have much of a personal life if a family, and she ends up dying.
Yeah.
Because she's I think wearing a mask and taking precautions and all these things, but she still gets infected and she dies on a cot in this big old like FEMA center
Mhm.
and is buried in a mass grave. And that is, I mean, you have to know that that's a possibility.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so like, what a sacrifice. But oh no, we don't
For a
need that.
thankless so. And
Yeah.
just to be clear, I don't think it's realistic to believe that a leader should know every job like that and how it works, and that while it doesn't on the surface seem to have value, it actually does deep down. I believe that a good leader would employ people who would know that.
Yeah.
And that's the I don't expect I don't expect the president to be the expert in every single aspect of government and how it runs. I expect him to have a large amount of competent people
And he needs to
do
listen to them.
that he listens to and that do understand. And that's where even though this has become a dirty word, bureaucrats come in. The people that are there, the people that are not political appointees, they actually have this information and know and understand. And you would benefit from some of that.
Yeah. So.
Whoever you is that I'm speaking to.
Yeah. But the Mears character, and then really the people at the CDC too, Allie Hextall is she's in the lab and she's investigating the virus, and she eventually is the one who she ends up testing the vaccine on herself, which is, I think, not realistic, but it's a heroic moment.
It's right. And and they really do, they kind of do the it's not the mega happy ending, but they do the, oh crap, we're 90 minutes in. We got to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Because we know, having now lived through, and this is one of the things they get wrong, having lived through the pandemic, like the thing that they focus on is how long it takes to manufacture enough doses and how long people have to wait in line essentially to get those doses. And we know from the reality of COVID that it wasn't necessarily the manufacturing that was the bottleneck. It was the time needed to develop it and then test it.
Well, yeah. So this movie spends a lot of time in the first 30 to 40 days of this. I think it starts right before Thanksgiving, and at some point right at the end, like when she tests herself, that you're saying, oh, Merry Christmas. So that's super. You went from this thing didn't exist to we have a vaccine in 40 days. Like, are you kidding me? So, but it's a movie. So, then we just snap our fingers and, oh, we have a vaccine and now we're going to figure out who gets it. It's
a while passes. I think they pass a few months. Maybe,
I think they went from 30 to 40 days to 130 days.
So
that's
her
3-4 months
to,
so
still
fast,
which is incredibly fast. And I get that, and we experience this, you fast track things.
Yeah.
But the side effect that we saw from fast tracking those things was that people like the Jude Law character then use that fast tracking in our reality as another thing to throw shade on the vaccine.
I was
they only took 3 months to test this. Jeez, in human trials. Jeez, come on, that's not safe.
Yeah. Well, and I was sort of terrified at the end, horrified, whatever. He's going up to showing people outside, the football stadium and the college gymnasium and all these big, places where people are going to get their shots. And it's these long lines, which those did happen during COVID. And he's going up to people who are waiting, and you see him having conversations. And I was like, oh my God, he's talked them out of getting the vaccine. Oh God, I've seen this part of the movie and I don't want to see it again. Oh, and they don't follow up on that, but I'm sure that is what happened. And that was just, that was gross. Yeah. But the Dr. Hextall, then the research that she does, that part, I think, got praise from scientists for being pretty accurate. And that's because the screenwriter, Scott something, I don't remember, talked to actual scientists to get the backing here. And it was based on an actual virus that it was similar. It was respiratory and central nervous system that happened in the aughts sometime that we never heard about because it was gotten under control, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's nice. I mean, there is this, convenient virus that gets serious real fast and kills you real fast that they need to do for narrative purposes. But it's nice to know that the science behind it is still good. So most of it is true.
Yeah.
if not the other stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's the portrayal of one of the interesting things to see was the portrayal of the all of the testing procedures and so safety procedures and stuff that they were going through, the all of the stuff about, at a point there's a call to shut down all of the labs that have kind of, if a few labs have been given the samples, and if they're
Mhm.
not at a certain tier, to shut them down,
Yeah.
which of course ends up to be, one of the labs that's supposed to shut down makes the vital discovery
Yeah.
about how to replicate the virus or whatever. Seeing that sort of stuff and understanding that while the movie sort of portrays that as almost heroic, keeping going, like, oh, I'm so close to a breakthrough, I'm going to keep going despite the fact
Mhm.
that, like, those procedures are in place for a reason.
Yeah, that could have gone really, really
Yes,
bad. Well, and
yes,
that's what the Lawrence Fishburne character says. I don't want this walking out of a lab on the bottom of somebody's shoe.
yeah,
Because, and I know very little about BSL. BSL is biosafety level, I think, and like the level 4, which is what they have at CDC. Like everyone's in these, blow up suits, and you put duct tape around all the, where your gloves meet the suit,
yeah.
and you're attached to
There's
these,
you test your suit before you get in it. You fill it up with air and you test it for leaks. And
yeah.
yeah,
Versus like a BSL 1 is like you wear a mask and gloves,
yeah,
and I guess nothing on your feet. That's how something could walk out on your shoe,
yeah,
blah, blah. Um, yeah, like that worked this time, but that could have gone really badly.
yeah,
So,
exactly. I do think it is quaint that this movie sort of holds up the CDC and the WHO, but especially the CDC, as this sort of great hope that
mhm,
they're working on the virus or the vaccine.
mhm.
And our reality in 2020 was that it was exclusively for-profit companies that, with some integration from the CDC and that sort of thing, that were working on this
Well,
stuff. So
yeah, in real life, I don't think the CDC is involved in making vaccines. I think they are more about control. Well, it says in the name, disease control. Like you track the illnesses that are
yeah,
there, and you don't make the vaccine.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah,
the way that part isn't really, that part is assigned to the villain of the movie. The part of the profit part
yeah,
is assigned to the villain and his snake oil, versus the profit motivation of the private corporations that are going to make and again, the bad guy, quote unquote bad guy, is what he's all about, and he's kind of shown to be a charlatan and a liar,
mhm,
and given crooked teeth so that he's a buffoon and this
yeah.
sort of stuff.
Well, so a lot of his exposition scenes are he's having like a secretive, very deep throaty type meeting with this hedge fund guy.
Yeah,
And I was like, what is the hedge fund guy hoping to get out of this? Like, were they trying to buy? So from the beginning, Jude Law is talking about forsythia,
yeah,
which is this mysterious homeopathic thing that you take in like a tincture. And what does it do? He never explains, because why would you explain? But before the virus even really gets going, he's talking about it. And is the hedge fund guy like trying to invest in it so that it was,
yeah. I mean, to me, it seemed pretty clear. Like, the hedge fund guy is talking to him because he wants to know that there's going to be, he says there's going to be money to be made. And he knows he's not going to be getting the money from an actual cure, an actual vaccine or treatment. So he's talking to the conspiracy theorist, looking for, what is the thing that's going to get pushed. And
the
the
thing?
subtext of that conversation is he's essentially asking this guy, what are you going to push to your followers?
Yeah.
And that becomes very reminiscent of ivermectin and
something.
chlorone or whatever.
Yeah.
Which again is just, it's just malaria stuff. It's what's in a freaking tonic water,
Yeah.
it's just a simple malaria treatment. That sort of stuff. It's like, what is the thing that the blogosphere,
Yeah.
in the case of this movie, is gonna be pushing, and they're looking for this quid pro quo because he wants to make money off of it. Yeah, but I think that's the sort of thing of like, they are effectively asking him,
What's the shady
where
shit?
should we put our money? What are you going to be recommending people get?
Yeah.
And what is the at the time, he's not necessarily concerned with evidence or whether it works or not. And funnily enough, him actually asking about that in a later meeting is sort of what tips off Jude Law's character that this might be a sting.
Yeah.
When he starts asking, like, "Oh, did you know about this study that said that it didn't work? When you told me about this the first time?" And he's like, "Are you wearing a wire?
You never asked about evidence before. What's
that's
different?
The other thing too that they do to make him seem like they give him a lowbrow English accent.
Well, he has an English accent. Is it different than his usual one?
I don't know if that's his. I mean, it's like when there's you haven't seen this movie, but there are moments where Michael Caine, who famously has a Cockney accent, but almost never uses it, rarely uses it. There are a couple of instances in films where he lets the posh veil, fall and so, you little bugger, whatever. Like he doesn't say you little bugger.
Yeah.
But, he goes from this sort of very proper, I'm Michael Caine to I'm Michael Caine. I can't do a Michael Caine. I need my friend Dave here. He's with his Michael Caine. And it's same thing here. Like they give him this accent, and if it's Jude Law's, Christian Bale's natural accent is like more lowbrow accent.
Yeah.
In the English, it's like Matthew McConaughey has a bit of a Texas accent.
It's the kind of thing you recognize if you're British, but here
and it's shorthand for. And I think the sort of accent that Jude Law has, or it is even over here, is shorthand for this guy's kind of shady. Like, hey, can I get you something over there? What are you looking at over there? You want to get something? I can get you something.
Yeah. Well, at one point he's talking to the hedge fund guy, and he's basically defending the idea that you can make money off of this. And he's like, after Spanish flu, hygiene became a big deal, and Lysol made a lot of money. And I'm like, because that actually kills germs. Now, Lysol was marketed for a whole lot of things that it shouldn't have been. For example, Lysol you were meant to use it as a douche and as birth control. And that, can I tell you, that makes me cross my legs so hard. No, thank you. Yeah. But it actually does kill germs. So that's a different class.
Right.
Like this, I don't have any objections really to people making money when they have a product that actually does something that satisfies a genuine need. I have a problem with price gouging and making ridiculous amounts of money.
Yeah, a bunch of distilleries just started making like straight up, full on alcohol
for hand sanitizer. Yeah, that's fine. If you're charging $100 for a bottle, no. But if you're being reasonable about it, that's fine. But to give me just hair gel and say it's hand sanitizer, no, that's not okay. Yeah. So he's trying to make them the same. Like he's the same as Lysol. Like no, sir.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and again, that's kind of his whole character, right? He's supposed to be a hypocrite. He's supposed to be shady. He's coded in so many ways to be all of these things. And I mean, and you get it, like you get the opposite end of that with Marion Cotillard or whatever her name is, who I think is a horrible actress.
Really?
She's fine when you need a French person, but when you don't need her, when it doesn't say French lady, I think she is. She has this way of acting which is not very emotive, and in a certain circumstance that works, but it doesn't. It's the one thing she can do, and I feel like that's why she didn't get bigger. Like she popped up, what was it, Casino Royale or whatever?
I don't remember.
Like she popped up sometime in the late 2000s in a bunch of movies. Like if you're going to be a foreign person whose main attribute is that you're foreign, be Gerard Depardieu. Like be over the top and jovial and emotive. She just has this. And she's in one of the Dan Brown Da Vinci. Is that not her?
No, that's not her. No, that's the lady from Amelie.
Yeah, that's the other lady. Right.
The other French lady.
The other French lady.
Pale
When you need
skin
a
with
French
dark
lady,
hair.
right?
Yeah.
She's in something. The James Bond. She's in. Is it Casino Royale?
No,
Is that what I'm thinking about?
That's Eva Green from Peaky Blinders.
No. She's the French lady in something.
Okay,
I'll figure it out.
She's in Inception. I think.
Yes, she's Mel in Inception. That's not what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about something else. Anyway, yeah.
You don't like her. Okay.
She is right. Well, I don't care for her acting.
Mm-hmm.
She might be a lovely person,
mm-hmm.
but she is this pretty petite white French lady, who is being sort of making a sort of a sacrifice in her role. Like they're giving you like these angelic good guys and these like cruddy bad guys.
Well, yeah, except I wrote down in my notes the West kind of sucks. So she's kind of her own the WHO's version of an investigator, and she's sent to Hong Kong, which is they're figuring out where Beth was when she got sick, and and they figured out other people that got sick were all at this place too, at this casino, and they're trying to figure out who gave it to whom. And it's detectiving. They're looking at security cameras and who was there first, and and they figure out that it's like apparently you can get it just off a credit card. I was it was okay, but and she's working with her. He's a researcher, but he's also her translator. Sun Fang, I think I wrote down. I don't know if that's his name. And he's from a remote village that gets infected, and his mother ends up dying of the virus. And he says, we gave her forsythia, but it didn't work. And he's really nervous about the rest of his village dying. And he eventually, he and some other people, they kidnap her and bring her to the village. And the deal is they're going to give her back to the WHO for vaccines. So, and she stays there for a couple months, and you see that she's developed relationships with the people in the village, and she's teaching them English and various other things. And then the transfer back is made, and it turns out that the WHO gave the village placebos, didn't give them actual vaccines. And he says, oh, the Chinese insisted, blah, 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 blah. And so she leaves, like, to go back and tell them we think, blah, blah, blah. But I was just like, what an awful, like, I don't know. I mean, I suppose on some level blame the Chinese for doing that too, but what a terrible thing. Give people false hope. That's worse than giving them nothing.
But again, like you don't negotiate with terrorists, right?
Well, when it's
because if they get their doses, no matter how noble it is, then everybody. A lot of people have noble reasons that they need to cut in line, or they need, preferential treatment or whatever. I figured out it's The Dark Knight Rises is the movie from 2012, is the movie that I was thinking about her being in this time frame. Okay. I was like, she's in some other big movie, and she is in Inception, but it wasn't Inception that I was thinking of. Dark Knight Rises. That's just got that out of my system. Good, because I knew there was something she was in around the same time as this. That was big that I was thinking of her in. And
good to know.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I think it is this, it's this choice, right? Of like how, and there's maybe a movie that explores that, right? How far do you go? How justified is it? Yeah. If you give them real vaccine, then what about the rest of the people?
I suppose, but and we didn't see any storylines about people in the U.S. or anywhere else in the West getting their vaccine before they were supposed to, except for the one storyline with the janitor and his kid, which I didn't enjoy. So I guess, this is potentially the only one where somebody is doing nefarious things to get a vaccine. So it just sticks out, really. Yeah. And that's the only non-Western group in the movie, too. So it just felt like...
Yeah, well, and not to mention the fact that the whole thing originates in Hong Kong.
Yes.
China.
Yeah. So at the very end, you see.
Yeah, I like that they start the movie on day 2, and I remember thinking, oh, day 2, okay.
What? Yeah.
And then they pay it off at the
and
end.
they show day 1, or it's a condensed version of day 1, basically. But they do this neat trick. So Beth Emhoff, Gwyneth Paltrow, works for, what is it, ALMM, some multinational, terrible company.
Yep.
Day 1 shows one of their vehicles knocking down a tree,
right,
and displacing a bat.
Yeah.
And the bat ends up eating part of a banana
because she's there to
for a groundbreaking
on a new facility in China.
Yeah. And the bat drops a piece of a banana, and a pig eats it, and then the pig is taken to the casino and turned into pork.
Not a pig.
It's not a pig?
A babe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was so cute. It looks like Babe. And I was like, don't. So I know all pigs get eaten, but don't eat this one. And the chef is preparing it, and like has his grubby hands all over it and in it and everything. And then somehow, for some reason, they want to bring this American to meet him, and they shake hands, and that's
she's like the honored guest or whatever. Yeah. And that's the moment. Yeah.
Well, and I thought, is he then not the index patient? But I guess we don't see if he got sick. So
right, we don't see if he got sick, and we don't see if he spread it further.
Yeah.
Than that, which presumably he did.
Yeah, that's sort of odd, but
yeah, I mean. Is he the index patient? Maybe.
Yeah, I don't.
But
I don't know.
We have reason to hate her already.
Yeah. Yes. So she, on her way back from Hong Kong to Minneapolis, she had a layover in Chicago, and she changed her flights to have an extended layover, so she could go and sleep with this guy who I guess she had a thing with before.
Yeah.
And she ends up getting him sick, and he gets his wife sick, and blah, 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 blah. You know, basically, that's what, adultery kills people.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
That's the main takeaway from this movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. If she hadn't done that, Chicago would have been fine.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and there's this, Kate Winslet, Aaron Mears, knows that this guy in Chicago is sick. And, she's talking to Beth's husband, Matt Damon. She's like, do you know anyone in Chicago?
Yeah.
And he's like, I know this guy that my wife used to date. Is he sick? Did he? And she just sits there with this blank expression. I was like, that takes practice. Good for you. And he's figuring it out, and like, oh God.
Yeah.
He's just lost his wife and his stepson, and he's finding out, like, kudos to you for standing upright after that. I don't know how you do any of that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Did you have a favorite character or moment or anything in here?
Favorite character. I like the fact that Dave makes it out okay.
Yes.
The like sort of oafish guy that picks her up in Minnesota. He's like, "Oh Lord, I hope you brought more than that. It's going to get down to 0."
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't have really a strong Minnesota accent.
Just a little.
Yeah. He's just a kindly helper at the local health department. Yeah. Well, and he's worried about her having a coat, and she has a little jab at him, like, he's like, what can I do to stop pregnancy? She's like, stop touching your face, Dave.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm touching my face as we're doing this. And and he's like, and my wife leaves out soap and water for me to wash, and she puts them
in the garage.
That's an overreaction, right? She's like, no.
Stop touching your face.
Yes.
Yeah, and he, like, her final goodbye is him telling her that they can't send the plane, the CDC plane, to basically take her away.
Yeah, that was because it's bringing a sick congressman home, and I was God.
And then he is there at the mass grave when they're burying everybody.
Throw her in there.
Yeah, and the Dave makes it out okay.
Sweet Midwestern Dave and his wife with her bucket of soap and water, and people actually did that. I think.
Oh yeah.
Real,
there were people disinfecting their groceries when they brought them home during COVID and stuff.
I think there's people who still do. Like, they just got in the habit, and and like, and there were all these things like, let the mail sit for 10 days before you open it, because they
Yeah.
weren't sure at first how it was transmitted. I'm talking like the very
the
early
earliest days
stages.
of and we didn't know, and it was one of those things of like, again, a Jude Law type, 6 months in's going, well, what about the first month when you told us that we could that this type of mask wasn't good enough, so we couldn't wear it, but now we got to wear a mask all the time?
Clearly all of it was wrong.
Right.
Like, that's
like
not how
this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Like there was one guy in particular that I debunked so many of his on Twitter, that I debunked so many of his things that he blocked me after about 4 interactions, like 4 responses back and forth. Like he would send me, like, I said something about him spreading misinformation, and he sent me something. He's like, is this misinformation? And then I went and I found that in fact it was, and I posted him the link, like, yes, in fact it is. Here's the original, where that comes from. That document's been edited, or here's their amendment to say that this document is from 1997 and this is no longer standard practice for this organization. Like, here, and after about 4 times of like everything he threw at me, I was just like 30 seconds of debunking, and just like, no, this just isn't the case. Like, you've listened to some people, you've trusted some people who didn't earn your trust, and have now misused it.
I wonder, how would this have gone if COVID had happened in 2015, or let's say 2006, or I don't know, any time when half the country didn't hate the president just for existing. I don't know when that was.
It's an odd sort of thing to think about, right? Like, when was the last time that there wasn't a knee-jerk hatred for the president that was so deep as to create immediate distrust in everything they do or say?
I think, unfortunately, it was Bush 1.
I might give it to HW for the second half of his first term, or W,
yeah,
for the second half of his first term.
Because he had a lot of goodwill with after 9/11. So
and even here's the thing. I think it matters who's in the White House, right? If it's a Democrat, I think there is less leeway given. If there's a Republican, I think I think your average liberal will, because there were plenty of things Trump said and pushed for that I agreed with and was all about. I'm not thinking of any right off the top of my head right now, because unfortunately so much of his stuff was, can you get the UV light inside the body somehow? Like, it was just this,
he was just riffing,
just this moronic, just soft, smooth-brained stuff that he would just say because he has no filter on his, and these poor officials that had to sit there and like, well, no, sir, that's not really how that. So that overtakes the things that really,
the scales are not balanced.
So it's a problem. But I do think that if we had a pandemic in, like, say, even 2006, 2007, I think the complete distrust that Democrats had for Republicans at that time was more about political disagreements. I think there were a lot of things that Bush wanted to do that were sort of social issues that he really didn't get around to doing in his time. And so I think most of the disagreements then were political. And so you could kind of come at that from that angle and say, like, look, I don't like the guy, but he says we should be masking. Like, okay, let's do that.
Yeah. Well, I think, Trump bred this, I don't know, bravado, bluster, do this stupid thing, cut off your nose to spite your face and to piss off the libs, and just it made bluster a political statement. And I think this wouldn't have gone Well, we don't see the president in this movie. We don't know
Right.
what's going on there.
There's like one time where they say that, and a message from the president,
Blah blah
and
blah.
then one time
yeah.
they say that he's gone into,
Well, yeah, he's
the
in
secret
hiding,
vault.
which
Yeah.
is like yeah. I think I don't think that everyone would have fallen in line quite as much as they did in the movie, but with Trump, we had at this point almost 4 years of Trump just
Yeah.
being an embarrassment. So it was like this built up
Yeah.
disdain, and then he didn't handle it well. So I don't know, and he's still not handling it well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but yeah, not to make it all about politics.
I mean, I think we saw in this though, like nothing is not political. That's what
sure.
people are like. Oh, I just don't pay attention to politics. Everything is political on some
Yes.
level. You can't,
Yes, your food is political, your music is political.
Yeah,
all of these things are political.
politics cares about you, so you gotta pay attention. But anyway, but yeah, so in 20 years, if someone's like, what was the deal with the COVID? Like, this is not the same, but it turned out better than actual COVID did.
Well,
there's enough
I think
that's
this
in
turned out
common.
better and worse, right? Because some of the stuff that they swing and miss on is like, the trash piling up on the streets and
Yeah.
the looting and all this sort of stuff like that. Like I said, the sort of society collapses porn that writers always want to happen,
Yeah.
or need to happen for their stories to work or whatever, that stuff was a swing and a miss. But a lot of the other stuff, you do hope, like, man, if they could have, if we could have actually had that summer vaccine would have been great. That everybody's lining up in July or in August for that vaccine. Like, that would have been great. Yeah, that would have been nice if the timing, and of course, COVID's a different type of infection and yada yada yada. All the different reasons that it didn't happen that way.
Well, I think though, so they said at one point when they're doing the autopsy on Beth, it had just done something to her brain. They don't say, but it basically dissolved parts of it. Like, it attacks the central nervous system as well as the respiratory system, which I think is what COVID does too. That's why there's all these other things that happen either when you're initially infected or later, why long COVID is a thing. So like, it is not just a cold. And this was not just a cold. That's why people are having the seizures and foaming at the mouth and all this other, And I thought it was interesting. They show a lot of the people who Beth has infected dying, but it's all out of order.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's some indication that not everybody reacts to it the same way, which is what happened with COVID.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that they didn't do that I kept waiting for is to show a survivor.
Yeah.
Like, they say that it's basically 1 out of 5 people die or whatever.
Yeah, but where's
like,
the other 4?
I was waiting because that's what I was thinking. There's the moment with Mears where the guy beside her is asking for a blanket and she sort of pushes her coat off.
Yeah.
And that's when she dies. But you're thinking like, oh, okay, well, she's going to recover. Yeah. Like, they're going to, they got to show one person that recovers. She'll be the one, and like deservingly so.
But no. But yeah. What is I would like to, in this fictional virus world. Yeah. What are the survivors left with? Do they have their version of long COVID, or are you just you're done and you're fine?
And presumably this is survival without assistance. That's the base
they never talked
survival rate.
Yeah.
So, someone should be able to just sort of rough it out in their house and make it through with,
Well, yeah. And there's there's all this talk about forsythia as a treatment, but there was never anything else. So, anyway, they couldn't have imagined these kinds of questions when they were writing this because this was all crazy. So, well, folks, we would love to know what you think about this. Does this match up to your memories of COVID? Better, worse? Which character did you hate the most, and why? Is it Alan Crumwoody? We would love to know what you think. Please get in touch. You can reach us a couple different ways. You can send us an email. Our address is ysmypodcast, ysmy for you show me yours, @gmail.com, or you can find us on Facebook, same handle. We have new episodes every other Wednesday. So 2 weeks from today, no matter when you're listening, there'll be a new episode. Find that listed on in the Facebook feed. And next time,
Sorry.
it just fell apart.
Do I need to step in here? I don't even know this part of the
yeah,
show.
you never have to do this spiel.
I
keep messing it up. You probably should.
You're great at
You
it.
probably should. So next time Dave is hosting, and what Star Spangled Virus movie are we watching next time, Dave?
So I'm taking this opportunity to use the virus as a plot device that then tells a much greater story of the struggle between good and evil that has eternally been waged in on Earth and by humans. We're going to watch the 90s miniseries, so technically television, which we rarely manage to do.
Yeah.
So we're keeping our intro true.
Right.
The 90s miniseries The Stand.
Okay. Is this the one where Rob Lowe is in
Rob
this?
Lowe is in this.
Okay.
Which features a flu pandemic that then spirals into the epic ultimate battle between good and evil.
Oh, good times. Okay.
With the fate of mankind in the balance.
Okay. And there's also looting and trash piling up.
Oh, 100%.
Okay. So it's like COVID plus what happened in Contagion.
Yes.
Like, except squared.
Yes. And also you will learn the key to spelling any word. Good
to know. Well, although
just this one trick.
I was my school spelling bee champion twice.
Had you known this one trick that spelling bee judges don't want you to know,
it would have been 3 times.
You would have three-peated.
Okay. Well, all right. Go back in time. Tell 90s me about it.
I'll let you know.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, then we'll see you next time with The Stand. In the meantime, this has been You Show Me Yours. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye. The You Show Me Yours theme song is Uplifting Electronic Indie by Winnie the Moog from filmmusic.io. You good, dude?
Yes.
All right.
Are you?
Yeah.
Let's go.
All right.
Let's get crack-a-lackin'.